He served in the Army in Vietnam and then Ethiopia, where he met his wife, Pat. They traveled extensively in Ethiopia and Yemen, followed by a trip around the world on a motorcycle, inspired by reading the Iliad and the Odyssey. Together they have 5 children and run their own awning company. His story is court-martial versus divorce court. Please give it up for the rambling man, Dennis Hustead.
Well, one correction. I only got as far as Nairobi, and my wife, who was snowbound, sent me a letter saying, I know you think you're Ulysses, but I don't see myself as patient Penelope knitting by the fire, and you may want to reconsider your priorities. And here we are. Anyway, my story starts in early 1970 in Vietnam. I was assigned to a small intelligence detachment with the 173rd Airborne Brigade at a place called LZ English up in the Central Highlands. Think MASH when you think of LZ English, except that instead of Korea, there's a triple canopy ridge with, it says crawling with NVA and VC, who are not very friendly. Anyway, the road to my unit ran right along the edge of the perimeter edge of my LZ, and one night after dark, I'm driving down the road. On my way back, my headlights illuminating my movement, and I'm kind of hurrying along to get back to my unit, the relative safety of my compound. And I realize that I know that there's a big dip in the road up ahead, and so as I get near the dip, I hit the brakes. Well, at that point, I discovered that during the day, they had sprayed creosote, which they use to keep the dust down in the dry season, all over the road, and suddenly, I was sliding all over the road and sideways, and so I let off the brakes, I turned into the slide, did everything you're supposed to do, and all of a sudden, I think I'm home free when, bam! The Jeep goes into a little drainage ditch on the side of the road, and it begins to suddenly go up at a 90-degree angle like this, and I sensed that there's a catastrophe coming, and so I jumped out. I rolled on the ground. The Jeep rolled over on top of me and pinned me down. And then I'm sort of, have 3 dangers there. One, the gas is leaking all over me, so I'm lying there soaked in gas. The engine is still running with the possibility of a backfire. And worst of all, my headlights are shining out into the great void beyond the barbed wire, sort of attracting the attention of all the VCs, like moths attracted to light. So I'm like, oh Lord, what do I do now? And then I realize that nobody's even seen this or knows where I am. So I start yelling for help, and the dog from our unit named Dammit. That's it, that was the dog's name, Dammit. Dammit hears me and starts barking like crazy, and finally some guys from my unit come out to see what the dog is barking at, and they come back and hear me and come over and get the Jeep off of me. I'm thinking, wow, great, I'm rescued. I'm alive, I'm unharmed, and I'm all in one piece. What a great world. At which point, the MPs showed up, and the next danger begins, because they take me off to the station to do a report about the accident. So I'm the desk sergeant there. There's something of an SOB, and he actually apparently really had it in for me, because when I explained how fast I was going, his response was, "It's impossible to roll a Jeep at 15 miles an hour." And I said, well, I just did. Now anyway, the interrogation suddenly got broken off. I got saved because right at that point, the VC launched a mortar attack on the base, so we sort of went into hiding for an hour. Afterwards, I went back to my unit, and my CO was kind of suspicious of the 15-mile-an-hour speed, too. He put his arm around me and said, "How fast were you really going?" So anyway, time passed. I went on to Ethiopia where I met my beautiful wife and brought her back as a trophy. And, so we fast forward 30 years and I get a call from my daughter who's coming home from Charlottesville for my birthday, and she says, "Dad, you got to help me. I just got pulled. I was doing 15 miles an hour on the I-64, and a cop with faulty radar pulled me for doing 82. She called me because her mother had said, if you ever get a speeding ticket, you're losing the car. So I said, don't worry, I'll put my military training to work, and I go undercover. I call my friend Steve Burgess, a lawyer, and I say, Steve, I need you to take care of this for me. And he says, okay, that's fine. And I pay him in cash. Everything's under the table, and I go, wow, done. Everything's covered up. My wife will never know. Well, turns out that wasn't true. In my race to get out of the office, I wound up leaving the receipt for the cash on the desk, and the secretary said, I don't know what this is for. And she said, I'll find out what it's for. And so she was waiting for me when I came back. She's kind of now my permanent desk sergeant, you might understand. And she's assumed that, I've gotten into some kind of trouble again or yet another ticket. So I come back, she's waiting for me, and then she says, she finds out that it actually involves our daughter, at which point all hell breaks loose. All I can tell you is that the interrogation, the summary justice, and the interrogation was much worse than anything the Army could have done 30 years earlier when I had my other traffic infraction. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. 15 miles.